The Amber Heard and Johnny Depp trial has captivated the world. Because it's taking place in the state of Virginia and not a federal court, cameras are permitted if a judge allows them. In this case, we have seen every moment. The emotion of the testimonies, the tears, the laughter. Johnny Depp and Amber Heard have been front and centre. Both are actors and both are delivering very different testimonies. We've brought in Dr Louise Mahler, a body language and communications expert with decades of experience, to share her insights of the showdown trial so far.
Well, when you're talking about this case, there are really important things to know. One is more skeletons in the closet than a haunted house. And as Russell Brand says, a stew of complexity. Secondly, men have always had the advantage in these cases over many decades. And now we're turning it around with the Me Too movement and taking women very seriously. And these are serious issues. Thirdly, people do weird things under stress. Who can forget Lindy Chamberlain? We respond in a way that is very difficult. And lastly, they're both actors. And having said that, we really will never know. Now, as a conclusion, I have to say that every single thing that Amber Heard does, to me, lacks credibility. First of all, there's the way that she speaks in a lot of the testimony, where she goes into enormous detail, for instance, about the L-shaped bar or where he's standing. And it's like, that's, spending my life doing this and talking to people who are detectives and listening to things, people often will go into vast detail about things that are not quite relevant. And she definitely is doing that. She talks about dirty carpet, and there seems to be preconceived stories about the piggy bank that seem to be worked out.
I was just sitting there on this carpet, looking at the dirty carpet, wondering how I wound up on this carpet and why I never noticed that the carpet was so filthy before.
However, body language. What's happening there is that there's a lot of jaw tension. She gets that right from the beginning. That's not credible. That's fine. But it's when she tries to recall the emotional situations, it seems very manufactured. And something nobody has mentioned that I see is the breathing. The breathing is really manufactured. It's like when we're hyperventilating. And doing it consciously, it doesn't seem to come from an emotional thought. It's more coming from the body is trying to create the emotional thought. It's the wrong way around. And there are some incongruences, like when she puts the hanky up, one would normally blow one's nose because there's moisture, but she actually puts the hanky up and breathes in. And some people have said she's breathing in a substance or something. I don't know about that, but that would be a very odd thing to do. And then the crinkling up and the face down, that's fine, but it comes and goes and comes and goes, not in a natural progression. The other thing is the voice is monotone for a very difficult situation. It's like she's keeping it studied, and no real emotion comes into that. It just stays monotone. And again, it recovers too quickly if it does get out of hand. There are no actual tears. So when the crying's there's no actual tears.
I couldn't get up. And I don't know how that ended. I don't know how. I don't know what happened next. I don't understand.
To actually get tears, you can. In fact, people who perform, if they do breathe high, they'll actually turn to crying after a while because it puts pressure on the throat. And this is what you'd see Pauline Hanson do in the early days. She'd actually end up crying because she was breathing too high. And actors know that if you breathe high, you can create that state. So it's one of the techniques to bring on emotion. You hyperventilate, and it seems, if it is a genuine emotion, what happens is you almost see the trigger in the mind and then the breath follows. But with Amber Heard, it is a calculated strategy. Her high breath is trying to bring her to tears. And I have to say, she doesn't achieve it. So she remembers a lot about, as I said, big descriptions about the angle of the counter. But then when she's talking about the attack, she says, it felt like he was on top of me. He kind of held me down. It looked like he was punching me. It felt like he was patting me down. These are the wrong words for those instances. And, I'm not saying that she's not telling the truth and that there was awful violence going on, but she's not credible in terms of what she's saying.
And he felt like he was on top of me, and I'm looking at him in his eyes, and I don't see him anymore.
The trial is on hiatus this week. Heard will return to the witness stand on May 16. She'll next face cross-examination from Depp's lawyers. It will be a momentous shift in the trial, and one which Heard cannot prepare for.
I think she will become defensive. I think that she'll start attacking, and she has done that, throwing ahead, and she just wants out because it's all gone too far. It's all got, that's the sort of response that I would see. I don't want to talk about it anymore. I've been called out and it's gone too far. Not that I'm saying that there hasn't been violence, but it's all been escalated to a ridiculous extent. Johnny Depp is an actor, and he's got his character down pat. And his character is, I can hardly believe this is happening, which means that he's taken a strategy of closing his eyes, breathing and speaking slowly, looking down and hardly believe. It's farcical. So he has gaps in his speech. He speaks slowly. He has a sense of lack of belief, which then brings about a bit of humor. And he has stuck to that act throughout, which makes it credible because consistency builds credibility. It's one of the keys to trust. That consistency says to you, it has unconscious messages to the listener, which says this man is consistent. So he shows no violence, and look at him. He is consistent. Therefore, he is consistently smooth in his behavior. And when it comes to have you ever been hit a woman, absolutely not. His straightforwardness and look, it's a credible performance. Is it a true performance? Who knows? But that's certainly the way their acts are coming across.
I've never struck Miss Heard. As I said yesterday, I've never struck Miss Heard. I've never struck a woman in my life.
Very clearly, it looks like he is speaking his truth. It looks like she is making things up on the spot. I'm not saying making things up about the incidents, but exaggerating them in some way. That's what it looks like. But we have to remember there was clearly some violence there. They're both actors, and Johnny Depp has chosen a simpler act. So his act is just consistency and slow, and he's able to hold that for week after week after week, whereas her emotive act is harder to maintain. And who knows if she's just exhausted, bored, whatever, but it doesn't come across well because she's unable to bring out those emotions in the courtroom.